Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about the lament of the Sunday school teacher and what can be done to change the apathy that is found in the adolescents regarding their faith. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper et secula seculorum. So, I have mentioned, and I'll put a banner up here, my experience as a Sunday school teacher. I taught 10th grade Sunday school at a church of the Ordinariate of the Chair in St. Peter. For lack of a better word, it's Anglican, former Anglican parishes that came back to Holy Mother Church. So Pope John Paul allowed them to keep their liturgy. So I call it Anglican Rite, but it's still Novus Ordo, but it's different. They do Ad Orientem, you have to receive on the tongue, the prayers are different. It's a beautiful service. So I was a Sunday school teacher not that long ago at one of these parishes. And I think my experience as a Sunday school teacher there is very different than people that I know who've taught Sunday school. And it's not always on Sundays, I know it's on Wednesdays or Tuesdays, but you know what I'm talking about. Catechesis class, confirmation class, whatever you want to call it. It's different from people I've talked to who do it at the typical parish. My experience was that the kids I had probably 10 kids. They all came from big families. I had a couple of my students who had 9 siblings. Most of these kids were either homeschooled or they went to like well-regarded classical education charter type schools. And these kids as a whole knew their faith pretty well. I wouldn't say they knew it well. We played some trivia games and some of the kids maybe you couldn't name the 4 Gospels, but as a whole you can tell that the ethos of the Catholic faith was in them, in that you felt pretty confident, or I felt pretty confident that they were going to continue to practice their faith later on, because the statistics are daunting. We do have a video that I mentioned here, how 10 years after high school, so at age 28, only 6% of Catholics who went to a public school are still practicing their faith, and it's 12% if they went to a Catholic school. 12%. So, I'm assuming that if you're homeschooled, it's probably going to be higher than that, but the numbers are daunting. So my friends who teach Sunday school at the regular parishes, they say, and the kids are checked out. I mean, the kids are checked out. Most of these that my friends teach high school, and it's going to be confirmation or pre-confirmation classes. The kids lack interest. They don't really care about the faith. They have to show that they're going to Mass because that's part of the confirmation requirement. So at certain parishes, I know that they have a QR code because the kids are all in attack, right? You got to have a QR code and to show that they're logging in. And the teachers I talked to are like, these kids wouldn't be going to Mass if A, their parents didn't make it do it, or B, they didn't have to do it to get confirmed. And most of these people, and again, this is just anecdotal. It's anecdotal. I'm not saying that I'm going to project generalizations for all the United States, but they're saying that if it wasn't for the parents pushing this, they probably wouldn't do it, and that they go to Mass because either the parents tell them to do it. And to them, most of these kids, like if you tell them, you're not going to get confirmed, they'd be like, but the parents are pushing it because the parents maybe want them to get married later on in the faith, or the parents have this nominal kind of like, we're Catholic, you need to get confirmed, but they don't necessarily practice the faith. There's the whole idea of lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi, right? You got to have, if you care about your faith, you express it through your prayer, and then from your prayer you express it in your life. So some Catholics will be like, yeah, the faith is important to me, but they really don't practice it through the day. They don't really educate it to their kids at all, day in, day out, because we know the number one educator of the faith is the parents, right? And you see this kind of lament with public school teachers that I know too. It's like they feel like they're almost daycare workers, in that the parents are the number one educators, but they're like, yeah, we're just going to punt that to you guys. And it's almost the same thing with the Sunday school teachers. We're just going to punt that to you. So they lament how these kids don't know anything about their faith. They're totally checked out. If confirmation is not important to them, they would probably also lament that the curriculum given to them is not super rigorous. Like it just might be, and I can relate to this. Back in the 1980s, I was confirmed in 1988, and I went to a Catholic school, by the way, and I talk about in the episode like who I am, my backstory. I'll try to remember to put that banner up. But I went to a Catholic school from first grade all the way through university. My university was a Catholic and name-only university. I did not go to Steubenville or Ave Maria or one of these places. But my experience with confirmation was I was making the felt banners. I was making the cards. I did remember that we'd have to go to, I think it was like Wednesday night meetings for 6 months. But, and again, this was 30 years ago. It's not like I have a really great memory of what confirmation class was, but I really don't remember it being that rigorous. So we have these young Catholics who are being raised in the Catholic faith, but the question is like, how extensively are they being raised? And I think this is a problem. Now, Protestants, if you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, you go to mega church eventually. But I would tell you, look, we have a universal enemy, and that's materialism, secular atheism. It is picking off all Christians. And you see this with the stats, how the rise of the non-affiliated has grown so much. So I would tell you that it's not necessarily a good thing that the Catholics are not being well catechized. And we know this has been a problem, really. I think most people would say since Vatican II, but I think a lot of people have a halcyon view of what catechesis was like prior to Vatican II with the Baltimore Catechism. And yes, kids were taught rote memory. What is the meaning of life? To know God, to love God, to serve God. What is the sacrament? We would memorize these things, but like how well did we know the faith? It remains to be seen. But I think it is daunting today. And if you talk to anybody that's involved in religious education, how it's a problem. And I've talked about before how like maybe we should do it the way the Eastern churches do it and the ordinariate do it, how they will do, and of course the Eastern churches will do baptism, Eucharist, and confirmation, all three at infant level. Whereas let's say in the ordinariate or some of the Eastern churches, they'll do Eucharist, confession, and confirmation at around age 7, age 8, age of reason. Maybe that would help because the kids would get that infusion of grace from confirmation at a much younger age. My concern is, then depending on what parish it is, maybe these kids are not going to receive any more religious education after second grade. I will say that at the ordinariate where I went, they had religious education for every year, and there were kids. I wouldn't say like every kid at that age was going to these Sunday school classes, but even after they received all their sacraments, so third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, all the way up, there were kids in these classes. Whether or not they wanted to be there to learn or their parents are pushing it, at least the parents were involved and there was an interest. And I think if you look at a lot of just the typical suburban parishes, I don't even think the parents are that interested. They'll say, of course, that they're interested, but they're not demonstrating it day in, day out. Like how often are they doing the rosary? How often are they praying together? How often are they teaching church history? How often are they doing all these things? So I don't know. There's no like great answer to this. So I just wanted to kind of lament and rage. So guys, post in the comments if you know any Sunday school teachers or what do you think we can do to change this. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.